Welcome to Sidetracked, your unofficial agency of record. I'm Shane.
And I'm Emily, and we help run Trek, a tech-driven, full-service creative agency based in Rockford, Illinois.
Here on the podcast, we tackle our clients' biggest marketing challenges. We reveal what's worked for us and dig into real-life case studies and practical strategies you can put to work today.
Curiosity is our compass, which is why we always start with a question. All right, so today's big question is, how do you continue to market your product or service through times of uncertainty? It's a vague question.
Well, the actual question that we got, I'll read the email. How to market products, pivot, or phase out those slated to be illegal in 1 year. So I think what this person's referring to is the fact that there are some pending possible new regulations around products that contain THC. And that's a tough place to be in. Your products are legal right now. It looks like they're not going to be legal by the end of this year. What do? Do you keep marketing them? Do you just act as if it's business as usual and hope that this doesn't actually happen? Or do you totally pivot? I think most marketers can relate to that, even if it's not my product might become illegal. There are other types of uncertainty that marketers face all the time. What are some examples, Emily, of types of uncertainty that your clients have faced?
I think there's a couple. Just thinking about the recent year, there was a lot of our clients impacted by the tariffs and the effect not just to their business, but then to their customers. So then the uncertainty is things that are outside of their control. So that's similar to this person's question: was this thing is happening to our business and it's uncertain. We don't have a say in what happens, and so we have to prepare for that uncertainty that's out of our hands. At the same time, though, there is the uncertainty that comes when the things does happen. So let's say in November, they say this product becomes illegal. You're dealing with the certainty of change, but then the uncertainty becomes, what are my customers going to do now? Or we've looking at our clients that had the tariff specifically impacted a lot of their customers then couldn't purchase things because their budgets didn't go as far. Or the postal increases was the same kind of thing. They couldn't buy as much mail because their dollar didn't go as far as it used to. So then all those printers having to adapt to how do we provide value or that kind of thing. And a lot of it, the hard part about this is that a lot of it isn't just a marketing problem, but it is understanding how your business is going to approach what is happening and this uncertainty, and then aligning that decision with the way that you communicate your product. And that's not to get too ahead of myself, but that's really a successful way to navigate uncertainty is look at the things that you can control. Who are you as a business? How are you as a business going to respond to these things? What are the things that you know that you can control, like the hours of day that you put into projects that have established budget or don't have established budget, that kind of thing. And focus there. And it really helps then on the marketing side, know where you need to spend your time and your dollars.
All right, Emily, I'm turning the tables on you this episode because I just want to pick your brain about what you would do if a client came to you with a problem like this. So, number one, you're right. It's a bigger business problem that the business is dealing with. Marketing is not going to solve this problem on their own. What advice would you give a client who is a marketer about how they should be working with the rest of the business when something like this is happening?
I think it starts with understanding what the business is going through and the way that it impacts people. So when there is uncertainty, there is always going to be anxiety and confusion and stress, and probably your leaders are trying to figure things out the best they can. And so when marketing can play a really significant role in helping to fill in some gaps in sales or, hit the gas when you need to support the business as a whole. And the best way to do that, first understanding where your leaders probably are, or where the people who are trying to solve this business side of the problem are at, and then asking questions to get to the place to understand where those gaps are. So, in probably most cases, people aren't going to go to their marketing department unless they have really good leaders with really good communication skills. They're probably not going to go to their marketing team and say, "Hey, this thing is happening. It's really uncertain. I'd like you to do X, Y, and Z in order to fill this X, Y, and Z goal for this quota that we're not sure we're going to hit." They're just not going to do that. But knowing that that's what you need to get to in the end, like, okay, all of these orders are delayed because of the tariffs. All right, well, or like there's this idea that maybe in November this product will come illegal. We're not gonna be able to sell it anymore. Okay, how do you plan to move forward after November? Are we going to need to sell things really fast? Or is it more important to the business that we sell things at full value right now? Do we need to make as much money as we need to make? Just start to ask questions as a marketing team that help understand where you can help and where you can come along to pull the levers that you have. Because the other thing I think that happens is when there's these business problems, organizations don't think about marketing. They think I need to hit the brakes on marketing because I'm scared.
That's what I was gonna say. It's not that they don't think about it. A lot of times they will cut marketing in moments like this. And that's probably the exact moment that you shouldn't be cutting marketing, but you might need to pivot. You might need to
Right.
put your marketing money somewhere else. But you don't just wanna like completely, hit the brakes on all the leads that are coming in through your website, all the, any type of sales that are actually happening. You don't want those to dry up in times of uncertainty. You need them to keep flowing. They might just look different.
Mhm. Yeah, it is, marketing can be tremendously valuable in those times especially, and the instinct is to stop spending money because I don't know what the future is gonna look like, but the old adage, "You spend money to make money," kind of thing really does come into play here because it's not gonna come the ways that you thought that you would get it or that you have traditionally gotten it. And actually, a perfect example of this is in 2020, there was a ton of uncertainty and a ton of evolution that businesses had to take in order to continue to do business. And I think everyone just sort of knew that it was all kind of up in the air and we're going through that change together. So there was a little bit of, I don't know, camaraderie. Like we all have to figure this out together. But that mindset is really still what can help anytime there is a stage set for uncertainty. It doesn't have to be a mass pandemic for something like that. But I think the main thing is that the way that you've always done things isn't going to serve you necessarily in seasons of uncertainty. And so it's going to be scary to try something new when you don't know the answer to other questions, but that might just be the time to try it or the time to go all in on some things that um, like advertising or getting your name out there in different ways that you've not done successfully or done ever before because it's you need to try something different
Maybe trying a totally new message. Like,
or a new message. Yeah.
the message might start being like, "Hey, this is gonna not be on the shelves soon, so you wanna get it now." Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yes. So you're saying to marketing leaders, come alongside the leaders of the other business units, departments in your business, and understand what is their plan, what is their strategy, and more importantly, how can you support it? How can you help
Mhm.
them? What are they trying to achieve, and how can you help them with marketing? And that may mean stopping what you were doing before and trying something different.
Yeah, build the framework for yourself that you can play in? What's the sandbox that you can play in this time of uncertainty? And then you can be creative with ideas. So like, okay, you can't get this on the shelves anymore after November. Okay, go wild with the messaging. Make it really fun, make it really creative, make it really impactful. And then, you know what? If it ends up being that you can still serve it after November, you've had some really good splashy marketing that maybe did a lot of good things for your business. It's like a good time to um yeah, to stick with what you know, stick with the certainty, build your framework. This is what I do know, this is what I can do, and then do that thing and be creative with it.
Yes, we often like to internally here at Trek say, okay, this is what I don't know, but this is what I do know, and then focus on those things.
Yeah.
Um, what are some ways you think marketers can kind of be like a source of calm for the rest of the company during times like this? Because as you mentioned, people like most people don't really operate well in times of high uncertainty. And so people are going to be stressed and businesses are made up of people getting work done. And if people can't get that work done or aren't, performing at their best because they're really anxious, then, the team is not going to do as well. So, what can marketing do to help that?
That's a it's an interesting question. Um, I think that it's funny when I'm thinking about just examples of when I've seen this play out with our clients and, um, marketers tend to be curious people, and especially if you're an in-house marketer at a business, chances are, you were not the doer of the work, like, you weren't making the product in a lot of cases, or you weren't doing the service or whatever. Sometimes you do, and then you move into marketing of it, but we tend to be more curious people in my view because we need to ask a lot of questions to be able to market appropriately, to understand if something's working, to work with sales to make sure that the alignment there is happening so that the revenue actually shows through that the marketing efforts are working. And so we're used to asking a lot of questions. Um, and so I think it's asking the right questions at the right time and knowing that sometimes people just need a little bit of good news and bringing back some of the positive things that are happening. Like marketing is like you get good reviews on your website or you get good feedback from clients on something that we delivered. It's important to bring that information back or those things that are that you're seeing positive impact that you're doing. The people who are behind the scenes or in other departments don't get to see that outward facing view very often. And so sometimes it's just like giving some people good news, finding ways to give them good news because you have the front seat to it in a lot of cases and how the clients and the customers are receiving your product or interacting with it. Um, so sharing some good news, asking the right questions to the right people to support them or to better market their products or services specifically where they feel like they can add value. People feeling heard is like part of it too, I think. And that's where the questions kind of get to. They feel heard when you're asking questions that are allowing to showcase their expertise.
Mm.
Um, the other thing is that and I was kind of laughing to myself and I was debating about saying this, but the other thing that people say about a lot of marketers is that like they're the bubbly ones who like don't really know what's going on or who are like disconnected from like the rest of the
I
business. And
disagree with this
I
cliche, this
do too.
stereotype.
I do too. But that is the perception in a lot of places. And I think sometimes just like being the bright light that marketers can be in the room, but um, interacting and being real with people in a sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Just owning where you're at. And I'm not the expert in the room. I'm in the room with a lot of experts. And people tend to feel like marketers are telling them, I need this from you, but they don't understand what they need. I hear that a lot from clients. I'm trying to get this for my team, but I can't because they don't have time and they're so busy and they think I need this silly thing and they don't understand each other. Marketers and their teams don't understand each other. Why does marketing need all these things? They're just causing more work for me. When really it's like I'm trying to sell the thing that you do so well better. And so I think like meeting people where they are to make it easier to get what you need or to work together. Um, I guess the trend of what I'm saying in all these things is just like connect with the people.
Mm,
People to people, connect with your teams and like it makes the work
yes.
better. Keep
Don't
open
like
lines of
retreat
communication.
into the shell of marketing. Like, I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to wait until I hear, but rather go out, talk to the other teams, figure out what's happening, like be side by side with them. I think also in small to medium sized businesses that don't have an internal communications team, marketing can be often the voice of clarity, the person who figures out what actually is the plan and what does the team need to know about it and how can we
Mhm.
make sure that everybody is marching to the same drum and has that right information, because you might need to create like a one pager on, okay, if it's a compliance issue, these are the regulations that are changing. Here are the talking points when you're talking to customers. Here's what you need to know behind the scenes. This is what we're doing about it. Like, you might be able to create easily accessible, comprehensible marketing pieces for your internal team to help them through
Mhm.
that time of change.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good point because they are probably getting questions if they're customer facing in any way. And if you're pushing out a message in email to all your customers saying one thing, but the sales reps or the customer service teams don't know what that message is either, then they might say something different. And that's a confusing customer experience with your brand as a whole. It's a good point.
Okay, Emily, can you think of a time when one of our clients was going through one of these eras of uncertainty and they ended up being able to like get a win out of it, figure out a way to turn a tumultuous time into a win-win situation?
There have been a lot of seasons of change, and I didn't mention this earlier. And we're talking about uncertainty. Is there's also a lot of aging workforces that are you're losing a lot of experts, sales or engineering or press operators for our print clients, that kind of thing. And a lot of the knowledge is leaving with them. And then there's the uncertainty of like, can somebody else do this job? Can I find somebody else to do this job? Can I train the people that we have to do this work? And while that isn't as that I wouldn't necessarily say that's the same kind of uncertainty as something that I can't control. Like the law is changing, these things are happening to our business. I think it's probably a regular one that every business will face at some point is losing an employee, retiring or otherwise, that holds tremendous value. And the ways that they have had to get inventive with training the new individuals and get creative with marketing to use the education and the expertise of the experts that they had to disperse the knowledge. So, like, we had a client have like 2 or 3 sales reps who just had tremendous product knowledge, and they left, and the month before they left, there was many phone calls and many things, and that's never enough time, to get the right information. So, we built a lot of, like, marketing automation and a lot of the information from the recordings we put into the process of HubSpot to automate the way that they do the business. So, for example, this individual might have been someone who would receive every phone call, every email, and then they would handle it offline. No one would ever know, but the orders kept coming and it was always consistent and it was great. And no one cared because the orders always got entered, the orders always came. But then suddenly you take that individual out and the whole system breaks. So building in process for um, not just a person, because you're just having the same problem. You replace a person and then you just have another person who's not who's if they leave, then what happens? So we built systems around collecting client information, customer information as it was coming in, logging it, distributing it, and then based on what was said, how do you, like if it's a particular problem with a system or an issue, then it was tagged in a certain way. So then the system's working smarter and then delegating it to the right person. And then there's a paper trail of it. And then the sale that came from it, you can see exactly where it came from. It came from this phone call that had this thing logged, then it, trickled through the system. So that was kind of like a business thing. Then they were able to market to them better with the emails that would go out. Was this issue resolved for you? Or, hey, you spoke with this person and, I'm following up with your quote. And then it would set automation in the background that would check in with the customer after 30 days to say, what did you think about that quote? Did you have any questions? And just create a more robust customer experience. And they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have needed to do all of that. That made their business better, and I would say probably more profitable, more efficient, if they didn't have key people retiring that had that knowledge, that expertise, and those relationships.
This challenge that they had to face in the first place.
Challenge.
So what would you say to our person who wrote in and said, how to market products, pivot, or phase out those slated to be illegal in 1 year? Should they be marketing? Should they be pivoting? Should they be phasing out? Maybe all of the above?
Probably all of the above. I think it goes back to the business question is like, what are your scenarios? It does become illegal November 1st. What happens to the business? Does the business dissolve? Okay, well, then you know that you have to phase out at some point and choose when that point is and then build a marketing plan up to that point. Or it could be about inventory. So if the business does phase out, then, okay, I have enough inventory for 2 months. So then hit it hard for 2 months. Try to see, if you can sell it at full value or if it's something that you have to, it's more important to move the inventory than maybe you do sales or that kind of thing. If it is truly uncertain, it could change any minute. The business wouldn't dissolve. Then it's, again, a business decision of, are we okay with holding the inventory if, past that date, and then working with leadership to decide if you want to be as heavy-handed in your marketing or if you want to service the clients you have, the customer base that you have first and really well for the time that you have. It depends on, the business model. Like if there's a subscription, for example, if there's a potential end date, you want to make sure that the customers you have get their full value while they have it, knowing your inventory might be limited later in the year.
And maybe there's some new product development happening in the background.
Yes. Yes. That should probably happen.
Problem solved. Joining us for Problem Solved is performance marketing strategist Jake Sellers. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I'm going to set up the scenario that we had with this client, and then we have some questions for you about it. So here's the scenario. Client is in one industry. They do very specialized work. There's an opportunity to do work that is adjacent to that specialized work and perhaps expand their services. And they're interested in this opportunity because suddenly there are a bunch of tax credits available to people who want to buy this other adjacent service. So client came to us, said, hey, yes, we're really specialized. You've been marketing our very specialized services for a while. We want to see if we can expand into this other area. We know we can do it. And so we set up a campaign for them to start generating leads on this adjacent service. Fast forward a little bit, those tax credits are ending kind of in a surprise fashion. And so they come to us and they say, okay, tax credit's ending. So, we're not really going to
Just
be doing
kidding.
this work anymore. Just kidding. And
Mhm.
also, we want to hire people that were specializing in that adjacent work because we know they can probably do our specialized work. So then we totally pivot, launch a new campaign that is a recruiting campaign so that they can go after some of these people who are now getting laid off because that part of the industry is kind of dwindling down for the moment. Again, a lot of
Mhm.
uncertainty like we've been talking about, but this is an example of a client who was able to successfully pivot through some of these eras of uncertainty. So, I want, Jake, if you could tell us about the types of campaigns that we were doing for this client, the channels that we were taking advantage of, and kind of like what levers do we have to pull when a client comes to us with a challenge like that?
Yeah, and especially as we're dealing with changes that are fast paced, that's really where paid media comes into play because we're able to act on that fast and we're able to test messages faster than other methods might allow. So, whenever that opportunity came to us, the recommendations there were one, a paid search campaign, which was there to capture more immediate bottom of the funnel demand for, in this specific case, people looking for new opportunities. But because, as you had noted, it's more of a thematically or tangentially related service that, at its base, requires the same types of competencies. There's still a little bit of nurturing or at least narrative storytelling to show this audience, how it relates and how it can, in this scenario, serve as more of a specialization and long-term career path. So, in addition to a paid search campaign to capture that immediate intent, we also launched a paid social campaign on LinkedIn, which allows for more sophisticated targeting in terms of the core competencies, job functions, industries that this client was wanting to source people from. And with that, we were able to run three separate campaigns there. One for like single image ads, which typically perform well and allows us to test a variety of different creative formats at once. And we also ran a carousel ad, which helps from a more static but still visual aspect tell that story in a variety of ways. But one of the creative formats that we see work best on paid social and just in general would be video, just as that helps, people enjoy video more often than they might read, and it also helps tell that narrative story in a way that we can control and really highlights the key aspects that we want to depict. So we had that running on LinkedIn to capture more of, the precise targeting capabilities within that platform. But we also understood within this industry, there might be a large portion of that audience that is not on LinkedIn. And we also needed to introduce some of that narrative storytelling in a place where they likely are, which we were able to run a YouTube campaign as well, two different video ads to, again, A/B test, which is performing better. And since that demographic were male 18 to 45, a lot of those individuals are going to be on YouTube anyway, which at this point we're seeing a lot of reach with those campaigns and already driving engagement for what is typically just an awareness consideration driver. So it's good to see that engagement this early on.
Were these videos that we already had in our back pocket, or did we create new videos for this campaign?
Yeah, for this client specifically, we had a lot of backlog video content, which we were able to more quickly just re-edit and format those videos in a way that tells the story to this specific audience. So it was just a very fortunate situation to where we already had those assets available to us.
So they had the library of video already, which makes it so much easier.
One thing I think this is true, and so I'm going to ask this as a question. Is it a business problem for them to keep their skilled labor, like is skilled labor an issue for them? Are like retaining workers and that kind of thing? That's like an ongoing, I don't want to say problem, but like they're always trying to grow their workforce, right? Is that true?
Yeah, with this organization specifically, they do offer a lot of, on-the-job training, but there are still a lot of core competencies and needs of the people that they are hiring to qualify. So a lot of working outdoors, working in, specific types of jobs that require safety considerations, which the audience that we were targeting already had.
I think it's a really cool thing to see. Like you go down this one path to solve a business problem, get more business, take advantage of the environment, what's happening. And when that doesn't work, say, okay, let's go back to center our business. And we are always looking for skilled workers. Oh, you know what? This didn't work out here, but let's be creative. We have this other problem we're always trying to solve. Let's use the same resources and put those towards this other problem that we have. I think it's a good way to think about it. Like this isn't wasted effort. We were able to recycle this into a problem that we have over on this other hand, and you're using that same momentum. You're not losing the momentum. You're pushing that momentum in another direction to solve a different problem. I think that's
And
cool.
it allows you to pivot very quickly. If you've already
Yeah.
got the campaigns running and you identify that the winds have changed, something has shifted, then you can pivot very quickly. I will say about this client that the leadership at this organization is very good at looking for wins, business wins that come from outside of their organization, from what's going on in the general world. They're very good at that. And so I think that's one of the reasons that they even, were following what these tax incentives were in this adjacent area to their business so that they could jump on it quickly. They're just good at taking advantage of those situations because they pay attention.
Yeah, often as far as paid marketing is concerned, whenever there might be, in this instance, maybe a more steep drop off in one area, even though demand is decreasing here, any one of those, turbulent moments will just increase demand elsewhere. So it was good that the client understood that at the jump whenever we started talking about this potential campaign. But to be able to find that domain within these platforms that we have access to, it was easier to set it up, and it was, we were able to fast track it pretty quickly. And the fact that we were able to find that demand within the platforms and capitalize on it in a human and empathetic way, given that situation, I think has led to a lot of early and positive results.
Problem solved. Thanks for joining us, Jake.
Thank you for having me. Always a good time.
See you soon.
See you next time.
For this season of Mike's at the Bar, I'm inviting fellow Trekkies to join me for a drink and 3 questions. But little do they know that I have a wild card question for them. Today, Nick Ostick is joining me, content strategist. All right, Nick.
All right.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
First question.
Okay.
What's something you wish clients knew the strategy behind good writing?
I think if there's one thing I wish they had a better sense of, maybe, it would be structure. And I think that can be in a large macro sense in terms of the technical aspects of content structure, right? So if you're thinking in a digital sense, making sure that you have the appropriate H1s, H2s, H3s, that type of stuff, right? That very technical stuff, which is great for SEO. But I also think you can get more micro with it. And when I mean structure, I mean what's the best and most logical way to unfurl ideas in a piece of content, right? Like at the end of the day, I think good writing is just trying to take what's inside my head and put it inside your head in a way that you can understand and digest and get value from. And so I think paying special attention to things like, why does this paragraph come after this paragraph? Or why does this idea follow this idea? Or even down to a sentence level, why do we have this sentence following this sentence? I think those sort of more foundational building block type of things can sometimes get overlooked, but I think that those are really kind of where you make your bones.
No matter how technical it might be, you're still having to do the storytelling.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, with AI search and things like that, I think there may be a little bit less of emphasis on remembering that we're still communicating to people, right? We're still people talking to people. And so I think keeping that in mind when you're creating a piece of content or conceiving of a piece of content or figuring out what's the best way to communicate or convey these ideas, I think you have to keep that in mind, that we're still people talking to people.
Okay. All right, next one.
Okay.
When you're stuck on a headline or a campaign idea, what is your go-to move to shake it loose?
So I'm a big podcast guy. I listen to podcasts when I'm working out, when I'm just bing-bonging around the house, whatever it is. And so when I get stuck, I find that listening to a podcast that may be completely unrelated to what I'm trying to solve for is beneficial because it takes you out for a second of the problem you're trying to solve. But then when you're in problem-solving mode, your brain's just trying to make connections, right? You're just trying to connect one idea to the next to get to some sort of end point. And I think for me, listening to podcasts that are completely disassociated from the task at hand jars things loose for me because I can see, in this conversation, they're talking about X and Y, but the tenets of that conversation, the bones of it, actually apply to what I'm trying to figure out. And so it's almost like an anti-immersion kind of thing, where if it's like I pull myself out of this project, immerse myself in something else, and you open yourself up to new thoughts, and you open yourself up to, I think, solves that you wouldn't have otherwise seen. So when I get stuck, it's podcast time, and it can be a sports podcast, it can be a podcast about writing, it can be a podcast about music, just something that sort of gives me some respite from what I'm trying to work on at the moment.
So maybe your unsung hero in all of this is your subconscious. So when you're able to divert, your subconscious figures it out and you get your aha moments.
Because your brain's always working, right? And I think if you can kind of get out of your own way at some points, I think, yes, you're able to make connections that you wouldn't have otherwise seen if you're so in the thick of it, at every step. So yeah, I think just kind of getting out of the way and letting your subconscious do some of the work.
Cool. All right, here we go. Last question.
Okay.
If every sentence you wrote came with a soundtrack, what genre of music would play in the background?
Okay, so I don't know where to put this particular artist. So I don't know what genre it falls into, but I'm thinking something Nick Drake-y, I think, is what I would align with how I approach it. Because you listen to Nick Drake, and on the surface it seems very simplistic. It doesn't seem, there's not this sort of big sonic landscape behind him. It's just him and a guitar and a vocal track. But then if you really listen to it, the chord voicings, the finger picking style, all the things that he does on the acoustic guitar, there's so much going on. I think that's how I like to approach my work, is that it may seem deceptively simplistic, but if you pull it back, there's actually a lot to it and there's intention to it and there's meaning behind each move.
Okay. If that's a soundtrack, right? If that soundtrack's go for movies,
yep.
And we're going to release a trailer for your movie, what is your title track for your movie? What's playing in that trailer?
So I'm going to keep this of a piece, and it's a little cliche, but I think it's Pink Moon. I think it's Pink Moon. Yeah, that's good. It's got a little bit of moodiness to it. There's a little bit of intrigue to it. Just the phrase Pink Moon's kind of evocative. So yeah, I think there's some juice with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. But you're not done.
Not done.
Not done.
Okay.
Done with these.
Good, because this is, yeah.
All right. So, wild card question. You can grab it out of Grandpa's can. Pick one.
I have to grab it?
Yeah, you're going to grab it. You're going to pick it. Hand it to me, and I'll read it.
Okay. Come on, Grandpa's can.
Okay. Here we go. Oh, what's what's something you secretly think AI should take over so you don't have to do it anymore?
Grocery shopping. I can't stand going to the grocery store. I loathe it with every fiber of my being. So I think if I could get AI involved in picking out the groceries and bringing them to my door and putting them away, honestly too, because that's also just a completely loathsome part of the process for me, that would be great.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. If you like this episode of Sidetracked, rate and review it, share it with a friend.
Sidetracked is a production of Trek. Our production team includes Nick Grobe, Sean Burke, Nick Ostick, and Mike Wilson. You can learn more about us at trek.com. See ya.
See you next time.
Emily, one more thing. The best part of being in Rockford like twice a month now is going to Rockford Roasting Company and getting their espresso tonic. I'm obsessed.
I don't like tonic, but I'm here for all the good coffee in Rockford. Best part
Right.
about going back twice a month.
100%.